Introduction. The man who became a myth. Hello, dear friends. You are on the ASM Our Dreams channel. Tonight, we begin a long and unhurried journey. Our guide will be a man whose name is known to everyone, and yet whose true face is hidden behind a dense veil of 4 centuries. We are speaking, of course, about William Shakespeare. Take a slow breath and imagine England at the end of the 15th century. An age of contrasts. On the throne sits Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen, ruling a country that is painfully transforming from a medieval backwater into a great maritime power. London of that time is a living, breathing cauldron. Narrow, muddy streets where the sharp smell of waste mixes with the sweet aroma of exotic spices brought from distant colonies. Gilded carriages of nobles roll past beggars dying quietly from the plague. And of course, the theaters, loud, crowded, alive, their wooden, circular O shapes rising above the southern bank of the River Thames. And somewhere in this restless world appears Shakespeare. He is not merely a playwright. He is an architect of the human soul. Before him, literature knew types: the miser, the hero, the faithful wife. After him, literature discovered people, contradictory, doubtful, flawed, capable of falling and rising precisely through that fall. But before he became the Swan of Avon, he was simply a boy from the provinces. Chapter 1. The Stratford Beginning Shadows on Henley Street. The story begins in April of 1564, in the small market town of Stratford-upon-Avon. We do not know the exact date of his birth. Church records preserve only a baptism entry, April 26th. By tradition, it is believed he was born on April 23rd, St. George's Day, the patron saint of England. There is a quiet poetry in this coincidence, though it is most likely nothing more than a beautiful legend. His father, John Shakespeare, was an ambitious and energetic man. Not a simple craftsman, he was a glove maker, and his work was highly valued. In those days, gloves were not a trivial accessory, but a symbol of status, elegance, and power. Imagine John's workshop. The scent of tanned leather, rows of tools laid out with care, fine threads catching the light. Yet John Shakespeare aimed higher. He held positions in the town council, served as an ale taster, and later became bailiff, the equivalent of the town's mayor. William's mother, Mary Arden, came from an ancient and respected Catholic family. This union between a driven craftsman and a landowner's daughter gave young William a privileged childhood. Education in early years. We often imagine Shakespeare as a mysterious prodigy, almost illiterate, a natural genius untouched by learning. This is a deep misunderstanding. As the son of a town official, William had the right to free education at the King's School of Stratford, a classical grammar school. This is where the foundation was laid. No lined notebooks, no soft pencils. Classes began at 6 in the morning and continued until evening. What did they study? Latin, only Latin, Ovid, Virgil, Plautus, Terence, Seneca. He did not simply read these authors. He memorized vast passages. He trained in rhetoric, the art of persuasion, the ability to argue, to see the same situation from many different angles. If you have ever wondered where his astonishing metaphors come from, or his intimate knowledge of classical mythology, the answer lies here, in the dusty classrooms of Stratford. Roman classics became his flesh and blood, but in the mid-1570s, the family's stability began to crumble. John Shakespeare suddenly stopped attending council meetings. Debts began to follow him. There are many theories. Secret Catholic sympathies, dangerous in Protestant England. Or perhaps simpler reasons, financial failure in the wool trade. Whatever the cause, young William likely had to leave school early to help his father. Chapter 2. A hasty marriage and the lost years. At the age of 18, William's life takes a sharp turn. November 1582. Church records reveal a marriage license. for William Shakespeare and Anne Hathaway. She was 26, the daughter of a farmer from the nearby village of Shottery. Why the hurry? The answer is simple. 6 months after the wedding, their first daughter, Susanna, was born. Later came the twins, Hamnet and Judith. From this quiet provincial household, from responsibility, obligation, and uncertainty, a voice would one day rise that would speak for all humanity. But that is only the beginning. Now take another slow breath and let the story gently continue. Anne Hathaway, the silent enigma. Anne Hathaway remains one of the most mysterious figures in Shakespeare's life story. We do not truly know whether this marriage was a happy one. The fact that Shakespeare spent most of his adult life in London, far from his family, and his famous will, in which he left his wife, only his second-best bed, have given rise to thousands of speculations. But let us not judge him by the standards of the 21st century. In those days, the second bed was often the marital bed, the one in which husband and wife slept together. The first was reserved for guests. So this gesture may have been a sign of intimacy and affection, not an insult. And then comes the great silence. The great silence, the lost years of Shakespeare, the period from 1585 to 1592, is known to historians as the lost years. Shakespeare vanishes from the records completely. Where was he? What was he doing? Legends whisper many answers. The most popular tells of poaching, that he allegedly stole a deer from the estate of Sir Thomas Lucy and was forced to flee Stratford under threat of imprisonment. Others claim he worked as a country schoolteacher. Some say he went to London and began at the very bottom, holding horses outside the theater while gentlemen enjoyed the performance inside. There is even a version suggesting he served as a soldier in the Netherlands or traveled through Italy, which would explain his astonishing knowledge of Italian geography and customs so vividly, reflected in The Merchant of Venice and Romeo and Juliet. We do not know which, if any, of these stories are true. But one thing is certain. When Shakespeare reappears in 1592, he is no longer a provincial youth. He is already part of London's theatrical world. And not just a part of it, he is a figure who provokes burning envy. Chapter 3. London Inferno. The shaker of the stage London in the 1590s was a place both brutal and beautiful. The city was growing at a dizzying pace. Theater was not an elite art form. It was mass entertainment, something like modern Hollywood, mixed with stadium rock concerts. Theaters were built outside the legal jurisdiction of the City of London, on the southern bank of the Thames in Southwark, next to brothels, bear-baiting pits, and prisons. The audience was wildly diverse. Lords wrapped in silk, pickpockets, dockworkers, sailors, and servants, all standing side by side. The first written mention of Shakespeare in London is not praise, it is an attack. The playwright Robert Greene, dying in poverty, writes a bitter pamphlet warning his educated friends, the university-trained dramatists of the time, against an upstart crow, beautified with our feathers. He mocks him as a shake scene, a shaker of the stage, accusing this man, with no university education, of daring to believe he could write blank verse as well as the best of them. For historians, this insult is priceless. It proves that by 1592, Shakespeare was already successful enough, visible enough, to inspire hatred among professionals. By this time, he had likely written his first plays, Henry VI and Titus Andronicus. The latter, a bloody and brutal tragedy, may seem excessive to us today, but in its time, it was a sensation. Plague and poetry transformation through silence, and then catastrophe. The plague. Between 1592 and 1594, London is seized by epidemic. Theaters are closed. Public gatherings are forbidden to stop the spread of disease. For actors, this is a time of hunger and despair. But for Shakespeare, it becomes a time of transformation. It is during these quiet, frightening years that he turns to poetry. He finds a patron young, extraordinarily handsome, and immensely wealthy, Henry Wriothesley, the Earl of Southampton. To him, Shakespeare dedicates Venus and Adonis and the Rape of Lucrece. During this same period, the sonnets begin to take shape, minus 154 poems that will become one of the greatest mysteries in world literature. To whom are they addressed? Who is the fair youth? Who is the dark lady? In these verses, Shakespeare turns his soul inside out. He writes of love that slips into obsession, of betrayal, of the fear of death, of the longing for immortality through words. So long lives this, and this gives life to thee. He foretells his own immortality at a time when he did not yet even own a house in London. Chapter 4. The Birth of the Lord Chamberlain's Men. When the plague finally recedes, London's theatrical world is reborn, reshaped, reorganized, ready for a new era. And at its center, quietly, steadily, stands William Shakespeare. Take a slow breath and let the story continue to unfold. The Lord Chamberlain's Men in 1594. A new theater company is formed, the Lord Chamberlain's Men. For Shakespeare, this becomes a turning point. He is no longer just their playwright. He is an actor, and most importantly, a shareholder. This detail matters more than it may seem. Unlike most writers of the time, who sold their plays cheaply and forever lost any rights to them, Shakespeare received a share of the profits from every performance. Each full theater, each applauding crowd, each encore brought him income. He became a businessman of art, someone who understood that words, when spoken on a stage, could sustain a life. The troupe itself was extraordinary. Among them was Richard Burbage, the first great tragic actor of England, the first Hamlet, the first Othello, a man whose voice and presence could silence thousands. There was also William Kemp, a comic genius, a master of improvisation, whose jokes made audiences cry with laughter. Though Shakespeare, judging by certain lines in Hamlet, did not always approve when clowns spoke more than their lines allowed. The music of the 1590s, in the mid-1590s, Shakespeare writes his most luminous works. A Midsummer Night's Dream, a play where reality intertwines with the world of fairies, where love is both spell and potion, confusing and intoxicating, yet ultimately resulting into harmony. Romeo and Juliet, a tragedy that reads like a hymn to youth, to passion so intense it burns itself away. Pay attention to what he does with language. Before Shakespeare, English was considered rough, a barbaric tongue, no match for French or Italian. Shakespeare invents words. Brave new world. In a pickle, heart of gold. Thousands of phrases we still use today were born inside his mind. He expanded the English lexicon by thousands of words, mixing Latin, local dialects, and pure imagination. He didn't just write in English. He rebuilt it. Chapter 5. The Globe Theatre and the Storm of History. By 1599, the company reaches the height of its power and immediately faces a crisis. Their lease on the land beneath their theater expires. The landowner, hoping to seize the building, refuses to renew it. So what do the Lord Chamberlain's men do? They commit an act of quiet audacity. On a cold December night, while the landowner celebrates Christmas, the actors and carpenters dismantle their theater, beam by beam. They carry the timber across the frozen Thames and rebuild it on the opposite bank. The new theater is called the Globe. Above its entrance hangs a Latin motto, Totus Mundus agit histrionem. All the world plays a part. Or, as we now say, all the world's a stage. Kings, power, and Falstaff. The construction of the Globe coincides with Shakespeare's great historical plays. Richard II, Henry IV, Henry V. These are not dry retellings of history. They are deep investigations of power. What makes a king legitimate? Must subjects obey a tyrant? Prince Hal, the future Henry V, travels from drunken taverns to the throne itself, transforming into the image of an ideal monarch. And alongside him appears one of the most alive characters in all of literature, Sir John Falstaff. Fat, drunken, cowardly, a liar, and endlessly charming. Falstaff becomes so popular that, according to legend, Queen Elizabeth herself asks Shakespeare to write a play showing Falstaff in love. Thus are born the Merry Wives of Windsor, shadows behind the applause, death of a son and Hamlet, but behind the success, shadows gather. In 1596, Shakespeare's only son dies, Hamlet, 11 years old. We will never know how deeply this loss cut him, but scholars notice something unmistakable. After this year, themes of fathers and children, loss and grief, become sharper, more painful. And a few years later, he writes a play whose title echoes his son's name, Hamlet. Chapter 6, The Great Turning, the shadow of Hamlet. The year 1600 arrives, the turn of the century. Something changes. The golden light of the comedies fades. In its place come the so-called dark comedies, or problem plays. Measure for Measure, where humor tastes of bitterness and morality feels uncertain. And then, Hamlet, an explosion. Hamlet is the first truly modern human in literature. He does not simply act. He thinks about acting. His famous to be, or not to be, is not merely a meditation on suicide. It is a question about existence itself, about how to live in a world that feels out of joint. Take a slow breath. Let the words settle. The mystery of Shakespeare is only beginning to deepen. Shakespeare breaks the canon of the revenge tragedy. In the typical play of his time, everything was simple and direct. The hero discovered the truth, and in the very first act, he killed the villain. But Hamlet chooses a different path. He hesitates. He doubts. He reflects. He analyzes every movement of his own soul. He plays the role of a madman, not as weakness, but as a strategy for survival in a world of total surveillance and constant spying. A quiet greeting to the court of Elizabeth I, where the network of spies created by Francis Walsingham ran through every layer of society, from taverns to royal chambers. In Hamlet, Shakespeare reaches an astonishing level of psychological depth. He shows us that the most terrifying hell is not outside, but inside the human mind. Part 2, The Shadow of the Crown and the Abyss of the Soul, Chapter 7, A Change of Era. From Elizabeth to James, in March of 1603, England fell silent. Elizabeth I died, a woman who, for an entire generation, had been the symbol of stability and national greatness. With her death, the golden age came to an end. But for William Shakespeare, this moment became not a conclusion, but the beginning of an even brighter ascent. The throne passed to James VI of Scotland, who became James I of England. This monarch was the complete opposite of his predecessor, an intellectual, a pedant, a man obsessed with theology, demonology, and the divine right of kings. And above all, he deeply loved the theater. Just 10 days after arriving in London, James placed Shakespeare's troupe under his personal protection. From that moment on, they were no longer the Lord Chamberlain's men. They became the King's men. This was a status of the highest order. The actors gained the right to wear red royal livery, to take part in coronation processions, to belong to the inner circle of power. But status also brought responsibility. Shakespeare and the new atmosphere. Shakespeare was now writing for the most refined and the most demanding audience in the world, the king himself. And it is precisely in this period that his genius reaches that dark, almost frightening perfection we see in the great tragedies. The atmosphere in London changed. Elizabethan optimism gave way to Jacobean cynicism and anxiety. The gunpowder plot of 1605, when a group of Catholic conspirators nearly blew up Parliament along with the king, filled society with paranoia and fear of betrayal. The shadow of espionage, double lives, and the fragility of reality itself fell across the pages of Shakespeare's new plays. Chapter 8, Othello. A tragedy of trust. One of the first great works of this new era was Othello, 1603 to 1604. If Hamlet is a tragedy of thought, then Othello is a tragedy of feeling, or more precisely, the destruction of that feeling. Shakespeare takes an old Italian tale and transforms it into a surgically precise study of human vulnerability. Othello is a Moor, an outsider, a mercenary who achieved everything by the strength of his own sword. He is noble, he is honest, but he does not know the subtle rules of life in refined, civilized Venetian society. And here enters Iago, perhaps the most terrifying villain in all of world literature. Why does Iago do what he does? Shakespeare gives us no single answer. Iago has motives: resentment over a missed promotion, suspicion of his wife's infidelity. Yet these motives feel insignificant compared to the devastation he unleashes. Samuel Taylor Coleridge called it motiveless malignity. Iago is a virus. He infiltrates Othello's mind and teaches him to see the world through a twisted lens. Shakespeare masterfully uses the metaphor of sight. Beware of jealousy. It is the green-eyed monster, says Iago, and it is he himself who blinds Othello's eyes. The entire tragedy rests on evidence lighter than air: a lost handkerchief, a misheard whisper, a half-truth. Shakespeare shows us how easily the universe of love can collapse when a single seed of doubt is planted within it. The final scene, where Othello kills Desdemona and then realizes his terrible mistake, is not merely the death of characters. It is the collapse of faith in human purity itself. Chapter 9, King Lear. The collapse of the universe, if Othello is a chamber drama, unfolding in bedrooms and corridors, then King Lear, 1605 to 1606, is a cosmic explosion. Many critics consider Lear the summit of human genius. This is a play that looks into the abyss and does not turn away. The plot seems almost fairy tale-like. An old king decides to divide his kingdom among his 3 daughters, based solely on which of them can declare her love the loudest and the most beautifully. And it is here, in this quiet moment, that the world begins to end. Take a slow breath. Let the words soften. The night grows deeper, and the story continues. The 2 elder daughters, Goneril and Regan, scatter their words like glittering dust, sweet flattery, loud devotion, empty praise. The youngest, Cordelia, speaks softly. She speaks the truth. I love you according to my duty, no more and no less. And from that quiet moment, the world begins to break apart. Lear is not merely an old man. He is the embodiment of order itself. When he violates that order, when he renounces both fatherhood and power, nature loses its balance. The great storm on the heath, where the mad Lear argues with thunder and lightning, is not just weather. It is the visual form of chaos inside his mind. Here, Shakespeare reaches an astonishing philosophical force. He strips his hero, literally and metaphysically. Lear tears off his royal robes and stands face to face with poor Tom Edgar in disguise, a naked beggar, a broken human shell. Here is the man, says Lear, no more than this, a poor, bare, forked animal. In King Lear, Shakespeare dares to question the very existence of justice. Unlike older versions of this legend, where everything ends happily, Shakespeare makes the ending merciless. Cordelia dies. Lear dies of grief, her body in his arms. There is no meaning. There is no lesson. Only a vast, empty silence. The world is dislocated, and no one is able to set it right again. This play was so unbearable that in the 18th and 19th centuries, it was often staged with a rewritten, happy ending. Audiences simply could not endure the truth Shakespeare revealed. Chapter 10, Macbeth. The Night of the Soul and the Curse of Ambition. In 1606, Shakespeare writes a play that is still considered cursed among actors. They do not speak its name aloud in theaters, calling it only the Scottish play, and it is easy to understand why. It is soaked in blood and in darkness, written especially for King James I, who believed himself a descendant of Banquo and had written a book about witches. This play explores the psychology of crime. Unlike Richard III, who was a villain by nature and delighted in evil, Macbeth has a conscience. He knows that killing King Duncan is a sin that will destroy his soul. But the witch's prophecy and the relentless pressure of Lady Macbeth push him into the abyss. Macbeth is a tragedy of imagination. The moment Macbeth commits his first murder, his life becomes an endless nightmare on the edge of waking. Macbeth has murdered sleep. He hears a voice whisper immediately after the crime. And truly, from that moment on, rest disappears from the play. No one sleeps. They wander in delirium. They see ghosts. They scrub at bloody stains that will never wash away. Lady Macbeth is one of the most powerful female figures ever created. Her invocation to the spirits of darkness, to strip her of femininity and fill her with ruthless cruelty, is a rejection of human nature for the sake of power. But human nature takes revenge. Her madness at the end, when she tries to wash imaginary blood from her hands, out, damned spot, is a terrifying reminder that everything has a price. Here, Shakespeare shows us that tyranny is not only political evil, but a mental prison. In the final moments, Macbeth realizes the utter meaninglessness of his entire path. His monologue, "Tomorrow, and tomorrow, and tomorrow," is perhaps the most depressive and at the same time the most piercing passage in all of literature. Life, to him, is nothing more than a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Chapter 11, Antony and Cleopatra, the sunset of empire. After the Black Night of Macbeth, Shakespeare turns to antiquity. But this is no longer the rigid, disciplined Rome we saw in Julius Caesar. In Antony and Cleopatra, 1606 to 1607, he creates a canvas of breathtaking scale. This is the collision of two worlds: cold, calculating Rome, embodied by Octavian Augustus, and sensual, magical Egypt, embodied by Cleopatra. Mark Antony is torn between them. He is a great general, a pillar of the world, yet he is a captive of Cleopatra. Her enemies call her an Egyptian harlot. Her lovers call her the earthly incarnation of Isis. Shakespeare does not judge them. He shows a love greater than politics, greater than empire, and ultimately greater than life itself. Cleopatra, in Shakespeare's vision, is an elemental force. Age cannot wither her, says one character, nor custom stale her infinite variety. She is changeable, cunning, magnificent, and pitiful, all at once. Their double suicide in the finale is not defeat. It is a kind of triumph. They depart into nothingness, leaving the world behind to dull, pragmatic survivors. Breathe slowly. Let the words dissolve. The night deepens, and the story flows on. Coriolanus and Timon of Athens. These plays reveal an astonishing mastery of language. The verse here becomes dense, fragrant, shimmering, like dark ink slowly dissolving in water. Chapter 12, Coriolanus and Timon of Athens, the loneliness of genius. In Shakespeare's late tragedies, a new note begins to sound, a deep disappointment in people, in the crowd, in society itself. Coriolanus, written around 1608, is the story of a hero who is too proud to flatter the masses. Caius Marcus Coriolanus is a perfect machine of war. He is brave, disciplined, almost invincible on the battlefield. But he despises politics and openly scorns the common people. He cannot pretend. He cannot bow. He cannot smile for applause. His exile from Rome and his subsequent march against his own city raise a disturbing question. What is higher, loyalty to one's homeland or loyalty to oneself? This is a dry, harsh play, almost stripped of poetic decoration. In it, one can feel the author's fatigue with the London crowd, which in the Globe Theatre just like the Roman plebeians, demanded spectacle and simple answers. Timon of Athens, written around the same time, possibly in collaboration with Thomas Middleton, is something else entirely. It is pure rage. The story of a wealthy man who gives everything away to his friends, only to be abandoned when he is ruined, turns into a manifesto of misanthropy. Timon retreats into the forest. He gnaws on roots. He curses the world with ferocious eloquence. Many scholars see in this play a reflection of Shakespeare's personal crisis. It feels as if he has reached the very bottom of his exploration of human baseness. Chapter 13. The Blackfriars Theatre and a New Aesthetic. While Shakespeare was writing his great tragedies, the theatrical landscape of London was changing once again. In 1608, the King's men finally gained access to the Blackfriars Theatre, a private, enclosed venue within the city. The building was a former monastery. Unlike the open-air Globe, it had a roof, artificial lighting, candles, and a more elite audience willing to pay for comfort. This transformed Shakespeare's dramaturgy. In an enclosed space, it became possible to use subtle sound effects, music, and complex machinery for visual illusions. Candles had to be replaced periodically, and so intermissions appeared. This is how the plays began to take on a clear 5-act structure, something that had been almost unnecessary in the popular public theater. This move to a new stage coincided with Shakespeare's transition to his final genre, the so-called romances, or tragicomedies. After the fury of tragedy, a time of forgiveness arrives. Chapter 14, The Winter's Tale, The Art of Healing. The Winter's Tale, 1609 to 1611, begins like one of Shakespeare's most merciless tragedies. King Leontis, suddenly and without clear reason, is seized by a madness of jealousy toward his wife, Hermione. He destroys his family. He causes the death of his son. His wife is reported to die of grief, and his newborn daughter is ordered to be abandoned in the wilderness. But here Shakespeare does something he had never done before. He introduces time. 16 years pass. The lost daughter, Perdita, grows up among shepherds. And in the second half of the play, dark Sicily gives way to bright, festive Bohemia. The finale of The Winter's Tale is one of the most magical moments in the history of theater. The statue of the dead Hermione comes to life before the eyes of the repentant Leontis. This is not merely a technical trick. It is a metaphor for resurrection, for forgiveness, and for the possibility of repairing what once seemed irreparable. Shakespeare seems to whisper to us, yes, the world is cruel. Yes, people commit terrible mistakes. But time and repentance can bring healing. Chapter 15, The Tempest. The Magician's Farewell. And now we arrive at 1611. The Tempest, a play traditionally considered Shakespeare's farewell. The story of the magician Prospero, the deposed Duke of Milan, living on a deserted island with his daughter Miranda, ruling over spirits, feels like the sum of the bard's entire creative journey. Prospero is the dramatist himself. His magic is his art, his words. He conjures a storm to bring his enemies to the island, not for revenge, but so that they may recognize their sins. Listen to the rhythm of the waves. Let the sentences soften. The night grows deeper, and Shakespeare, at last, begins to say goodbye. On the island, we encounter the entire spectrum of Shakespearean characters. Pure, untouched Miranda, the noble young Ferdinand, the drunken comic fools Trinculo and Stefano, the airy spirit Ariel, and the earthly creature Caliban. Caliban is one of Shakespeare's most profound insights. He is the image of a colonized being, a creature who learned language only in order to curse. He knows words, but those words were not given to him to liberate him, only to name his pain. At the end of the play, Prospero makes a decisive choice. He renounces magic. He breaks his staff. He drowns his books in the sea. Now my charms are all o'er, he says in the epilogue, speaking directly to the audience. Many see in this moment Shakespeare's personal farewell to the theater. he returns the actors to the real world. He releases Ariel, his inspiration, his creative breath, into freedom. He no longer needs to create illusions. He has done everything he could. Chapter 16, Return to Stratford. Silence after the storm. Shakespeare did not die on stage. Unlike many of his contemporaries, who ended their lives in poverty or tavern brawls, he retired as a prosperous, respected gentleman. By 1610 to 1613, he spent more and more time in Stratford-upon-Avon, in New Place, the second largest house in the town, purchased with money earned in London. Why did he leave? Perhaps he was tired. Perhaps his health was failing. But he did not sever his ties with London completely. He would still write, in collaboration with the younger John Fletcher, Henry VIII, and the two noble kinsmen. In 1613, during a performance of Henry VIII, a fire broke out. A spark from a stage cannon hit the thatched roof, and the Globe Theatre burned to the ground. No one died. But the building that had been home to Shakespeare's genius for 14 years was gone. The event became symbolic. Although the theater was rebuilt, this time with a tiled roof, Shakespeare never returned to it. The final years and death, he lived in Stratford. He handled local affairs. He sued debtors. He married off his daughters. He was a man of his time, practical, calculating, concerned with inheritance and property. In April 1616, he wrote his will. It is a dry document, meticulously listing who would receive silverware, who would inherit rings as keepsakes. And to his wife, as we remember, he left his second-best bed. On April 23, 1616, on the day traditionally believed to be his 52nd birthday, William Shakespeare died. Legend has it that, shortly before his death, he held a cheerful drinking party with his friends. The poets Ben Jonson and Michael Drayton drank too much and fell into a fever. This story was recorded many years later by a Stratford clergyman, so it may be only a legend, but it fits beautifully the image of a man who knew the value of life's joys and its sorrows. Part 3, Apocrypha, Myths and the Global Echo, Chapter 17, 1623. The book that saved the world. Imagine an alternative reality in which we never heard of Macbeth, in which the Tempest was forgotten, and Twelfth Night or Julius Caesar turned to dust. This was entirely possible. During his lifetime, Shakespeare cared little about publishing his plays. For him, they were scripts, living material for the stage, not lofty literature meant to be read in an armchair. Many plays circulated in pirated quarto editions, riddled with monstrous errors. 7 years after the bard's death, in 1623, two of his friends and fellow actors, John Heminges and Henry Condell, performed a true civic miracle. They gathered manuscripts, actors' roll lists, and scattered drafts to publish the first folio. It was a massive, expensive volume containing 36 plays. 18 of them had never been published before. Without Heminges and Condell, half of Shakespeare's canon would have been lost forever. In the preface to this edition, Ben Jonson, Shakespeare's eternal rival and friend, wrote a prophetic line. He was not of an age, but for all time. It is from this book that the playwright begins his transformation into the bard with a capital B. On the frontispiece of the tome was placed the famous engraving by Martin Droeshout, a face looking out at us across centuries, quietly, patiently, waiting for us to listen. That very portrait, the one with the high forehead and the stiff rough collar, the face every schoolchild recognizes today. And yet, it was this image that became the first spark in a long-burning fire of doubt. Chapter 18, The Great Question. Was Shakespeare? Shakespeare? We have arrived at the most scandalous topic in all of Shakespearean studies, the question of authorship. In the mid-19th century, during the rise of the cult of genius, a troubling doubt emerged. Could a man from the provinces, the son of a glove maker, without a university education, and judging by his will, apparently concerned mainly with money and beds, really have written works so deep, philosophical, and astonishingly erudite? Thus were born the Anti-Stratfordians. They proposed dozens of candidates for the role of the true Shakespeare. The first candidates, the earliest, was Francis Bacon, the great philosopher and statesman. Supporters of this theory searched Shakespeare's plays for hidden codes, ciphers, and anagrams, secret messages buried in verse. Then came Christopher Marlowe, Shakespeare's contemporary, officially killed in a tavern brawl in 1593. Marlowians believe his death was staged, and that the poet continued writing in exile, using the actor Shakespeare as a convenient mask. But the most popular candidate of all was Edward de Vere, the 17th Earl of Oxford, an educated aristocrat, a traveler, a patron of the arts. His life, indeed, strikingly resembles the plots of many plays. The Oxfordian theory is so persistent that it has inspired Hollywood films, most famously Anonymous by Roland Emmerich. Why do people doubt? The main argument is silence. No personal letters. No surviving library. No records of formal education. But historians reply calmly. In the 16th century, the biographies of ordinary people were of little interest to anyone. What has survived are numerous legal documents confirming Shakespeare's work in the theater, and most importantly, his contemporaries, including Ben Jonson, a man not known for keeping silent about fraud, openly and directly, named Shakespeare as the author. Shakespeare's genius was not in a university diploma. It was in his astonishing ear. He absorbed language like a sponge, listening to lords in court, sailors in the harbor, priests in church, and lawyers in taverns. He created a language that contained all of England. To deny Shakespeare's authorship is to deny the human imagination its right to a miracle. Chapter 19. The Architect of Meaning. Shakespeare and language. Shakespeare did not merely write in English. He reinvented it. In his time, the English language was in a state of chaos and explosive growth, and William Shakespeare used this moment like no one else. His vocabulary is staggering, by various estimates, from 17,000 to 29,000 words. For comparison, the King James Bible contains about 6,000. He was unafraid to turn nouns into verbs, to invent prefixes, to join the unjoinable. We still speak in Shakespeare's language without realizing it. When you say the ice has broken, call someone golden-hearted, or complain that you didn't sleep a single minute, you are quoting Shakespeare. He gave us words for the subtlest shades of feeling. Before him, love was an abstraction. After him, it became a sigh, a smoke made of vapor, something tangible, multifaceted, alive. But his genius was not only in words. Shakespeare introduced literature to psychological ambivalence. His characters can love and hate at the same time. Hamlet loves his mother and despises her. Othello adores Desdemona and kills her. This inner complexity made Shakespeare the father of modern drama and modern psychology. Sigmund Freud, by the way, built his theories on Hamlet and Macbeth, openly admitting that poets had discovered the unconscious long before him. Chapter 20, Russia and our Shakespeare. Russia's relationship with Shakespeare is a novel of its own. In the 18th century, he was seen as a wild genius, someone whose plays needed to be rewritten to fit French standards of taste. Alexander Sumarokov rewrote Hamlet so that the hero survived and triumphed at the end. But in the 19th century, everything changed. Alexander Pushkin was the first to truly understand Shakespeare's method, and from that moment on, Shakespeare became not foreign, not distant, but deeply, quietly our own. Breathe slowly. Let the words settle. The story continues. His Boris Godunov was an attempt to write a Russian tragedy according to the laws of the great William himself. Pushkin deeply admired the way Shakespeare portrayed people, not as flat villains or ideal heroes, but as living, breathing natures, full of contradictions, doubts, and shadows. For the Russian intelligentsia, Hamlet became almost a national figure. Hamletism, a state of eternal doubt, of painful reflection and inability to act, was diagnosed as the spiritual condition of entire generations. Ivan Turgenev, in his famous essay Hamlet and Don Quixote, divided all humanity into these two types: the doubter and the believer, the thinker and the doer. Shakespeare in Soviet times. In the Soviet era, Shakespeare was incredibly popular. His apparent progressiveness, his criticism of tyranny, fit perfectly into the ideology. But beneath this surface lay something far deeper. Boris Pasternak, who created what many consider the definitive Russian translations of Shakespeare's tragedies, saw in him a moral support during terrifying times. His translations are not just texts. They are music of the spirit. And remember Grigory Kazintsev's film Hamlet with Inikhini Smoktunovsky. This was global recognition. Smoktunovsky created the image of an intellectual crushed between conscience and history, a portrayal that resonated with the world no less powerfully than Laurence Olivier's version. In Russia, Shakespeare ceased to be foreign. He became ours, part of our cultural DNA. Chapter 21: Shakespeare in Music, From Opera to Rock. If Shakespeare had received royalties from composers, he would have been richer than any modern billionaire. His texts possess an innate musicality, drawing composers like a magnet. Giuseppe Verdi, in the twilight of his life, created his greatest masterpieces, Otello and Falstaff, based on the Merry Wives of Windsor. Verdi worshipped Shakespeare and believed that only he provided the level of passion opera demands. Pyotr Tchaikovsky gave us Romeo and Juliet in sound. Sergei Prokofiev composed the ballet Romeo and Juliet, whose Dance of the Nights has become one of the most recognizable musical themes in human history. But the bard's influence does not stop with classical music. Nino Rota wrote unforgettable music for Zeffirelli's films. Dire Straits sing of Romeo and Juliet on modern streets. Sting dedicates songs to the sonnets. Shakespeare is an endless playlist of meanings. Chapter 22: Shakespeare on Screen. From silent film to Netflix, the theater was his home, but cinema became his immortality. Shakespeare is the most adapted author in history. There are more than 1,000 films based on his works. We can identify 3 kinds of cinematic Shakespeare. The first, classical. Laurence Olivier, Kenneth Branagh, bringing theatrical grandeur to the screen, preserving every line. This is the gold standard, allowing the viewer to feel the raw power of the word. The second, reimagined. Franco Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet, 1968, casting real teenagers, a revolution. For the first time, audiences saw not actors declaiming poetry, but living, frightened, earning young people. Or Baz Luhrmann, who in 1996 moved the action to modern Verona Beach, replacing swords with pistols engraved sword, while keeping Shakespeare's text intact. And suddenly, the verse fit perfectly into the rhythm of MTV and the roar of the metropolis. The third, hidden, metaphorical. You may be watching Shakespeare without even realizing it. Disney's The Lion King is pure Hamlet. Mufasa, the murdered king father, Scar, Claudius, Simba, the doubting prince. Akira Kurosawa's Ran is King Lear set in feudal Japan. The series Succession is soaked in the spirit of Shakespearean chronicles, power, betrayal, and family wars. Shakespeare proved settings may change, costumes may change, but human conflict, the hunger for power, the pain of unreturned love, the bitterness of loss, remain eternal constants. Chapter 23: The Sonnets, a labyrinth of love and time. We cannot speak of Shakespeare without returning to his poetry. If the plays were his profession, the sonnets were his diary. Encrypted, intimate, dangerously honest. The cycle of 154 sonnets is the most personal part of his legacy. Most of them are addressed not to a woman, but to a beautiful young man. Shakespeare praises his beauty, begs him to marry, to leave descendants, and fights against time itself. My rival is devouring time. This is the central theme of the sonnets. The poet knows that beauty fades, that everything in the world is fragile and temporary. And yet, through quiet words, through rhythm and breath, he whispers a hope of eternity. Rest now, let the words drift. The night is listening. The only way to defeat death is through art, and in these lines, you will remain forever. And then, the dark lady appears. This is no platonic love. This is passion, raw, burning, full of self-punishment, lies, and bodily desire. My love is like a fever. Shakespeare is mercilessly honest here. He shows love not as a pink fairy tale, but as a heavy, often humiliating dependence. In this, he was centuries ahead of his time. The psychology of Shakespeare's sonnets still feels modern because there is no false pathos in them, no posing, no moral masks. Only desire, shame, jealousy, addiction, and painful honesty. Chapter 24, Why is he still here? We live in the age of TikTok, artificial intelligence, and short messages. So why do we still force children to memorize Hamlet's monologues? Why do theaters around the world release hundreds of new productions of Richard II or A Midsummer Night's Dream every single year? The answer lies in Shakespeare's unique ability to be a mirror of nature. He does not give ready-made answers. He does not preach. He does not explain. He simply places a human being into an extreme situation and watches. Shakespeare is the most democratic author. Everyone finds something of their own in his plays. A lord sees reflections on politics. A commoner, rough jokes and fistfights. Today, an intellectual may see in King Lear a meditation on post-colonialism, while an ordinary viewer sees a touching story of a father who wants happiness for his daughter. Shakespeare created archetypes. That became part of our thinking. We recognize Othello in every jealous man. We see Lady Macbeth in every ambitious and ruthless figure. He gave us a map of the human soul. As long as people love, hate, strive for power, and fear death, Shakespeare will remain our contemporary. Part 4, The Mechanics of Genius and the Challenges of Time. Chapter 26, The Pulse of Humanity, The Secret of Blank Verse. Many ask why Shakespeare is so difficult to read in the original, and why he sounds so magically alive. The secret lies not only in the words, but in the rhythm. Shakespeare wrote most of his plays in iambic pentameter. What is that? A line of 10 syllables, where an unstressed syllable is followed by a stressed one. Day-dum, 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 day-dum. Listen closely. If you listen to your heart, you will hear this rhythm. If you pay attention to your calm breathing, it naturally falls into this pattern. Shakespeare didn't just write poetry. He wrote in the rhythm of human physiology. When Hamlet says, "To be or not to be," that is the question. He speaks in this pulse. But Shakespeare was a master of breaking the rules. When his characters are agitated, when their world collapses, the rhythm breaks. Extra syllables appear, feminine endings, pauses, silences. For an actor, Shakespeare's text is a musical score. It tells you where to gasp for breath, where to fall silent, and where to break into a cry. It is no coincidence that common folk in his plays often speak in prose, while kings and lovers speak in verse. But when a king goes mad, like Lear, he loses rhythm and slips into prose. For Shakespeare, order in speech equals order in the soul and in the state. Chapter 27, Stage Gender. Boys in skirts. To understand Shakespeare, we must remember one technical limitation of his time. Women were forbidden to perform on stage. All female roles from Lady Macbeth to Gentle Juliet were played by adolescent boys whose voices had not yet broken. This created an extraordinary depth of metatheater. Imagine as you like it. A boy actor plays Rosalind, who, according to the plot, disguises herself as a young man named Ganymede to test her lover's feelings. The audience saw a boy playing a woman pretending to be a man. Shakespeare played with this brilliantly. He wrote female roles not around physical sexuality, but around intelligence, wit, and strength of spirit. Perhaps this is why Shakespearean women, Portia, Beatrice, Viola, are so strong and independent. They had to conquer the audience with words, not appearance. Breathe slowly. Let the rhythm settle. The knight remembers his voice, Shakespeare, and modern ethics. And when today we see great actresses inhabiting these roles, we understand something essential. Shakespeare created a universal soul, one that rises above gender boundaries. Chapter 28, Dark Stains, Shakespeare and Modern Ethics. We cannot avoid an uncomfortable truth. Some of Shakespeare's works spark heated debate today. The world has changed. What felt natural in the year 1600 now demands reconsideration. Take The Merchant of Venice and the figure of Shylock. For centuries, this play was used to inflame anti-Semitism. But if we listen carefully, if we truly hear the text, we discover something else. Shakespeare gives Shylock one of the most humane monologues in the history of world literature. Hath not a Jew eyes? Hath not a Jew hands, organs, dimensions, senses, affections, passions? If you prick us, do we not bleed? In this moment, Shakespeare, perhaps unconsciously, rises above the prejudices of his age. He does not excuse cruelty, but he shows us a villain shaped by relentless injustice, a human being pushed to the edge. Or take The Taming of the Shrew. Today, the final scene, where Katharina appears to submit to Petruchio, strikes many as patriarchal, even offensive. But contemporary directors have found countless ways to read this play differently, as a story about two lonely, unconventional people who recognize one another in a world of suffocating social rules, as an intellectual duel, a private game, a partnership disguised as surrender. Shakespeare is great because his texts resist a single interpretation. They are always wider than any ideology. Chapter 29, The Shakespeare Industry. From Pilgrimage to Souvenirs, after actor David Garrick organized the Shakespeare Jubilee in Stratford in the 18th century, the town transformed into a global center of cultural pilgrimage. Shakespeare became a brand. Today, Stratford-upon-Avon is an open-air museum. You can visit the house where he was born, his mother Mary Arden's farm, and Anne Hathaway's cottage. The Royal Shakespeare Company, RSC, one of the most powerful theater institutions in the world, constantly experiments. They stage Shakespeare in futuristic dystopias, in hippie aesthetics, in modern political settings. Bardolatry, a term coined by Bernard Shaw, has created an entire economy. Shakespeare on mugs, Shakespeare on t-shirts, Shakespeare as a symbol of British soft power. Yet beneath this commercialization lies something genuine. Every year, thousands of people leave flowers on his grave, not because it is a tourist ritual, but because his words helped them survive personal tragedy. Chapter 30, The Lost Treasure. What we never read, we know between 36 and 38 plays by Shakespeare. But was that all? Historical documents suggest there were plays that did not survive. The most mysterious among them is Love's Labour's Won. We do not know whether it was a separate comedy or an alternative title for a play we already know. There is also Cardenio, written in collaboration with John Fletcher, based on an episode from Don Quixote by Cervantes. It was performed at court, but the text vanished. Imagine this meeting of titans, Shakespeare interpreting Cervantes. The search for lost manuscripts continues to this day. From time to time, books with handwritten notes are discovered in old English estates. Each such find becomes a global sensation. We still hope that somewhere, beneath centuries of dust, there lies a chest filled with his drafts. Chapter 31, Shakespeare and Science. Through telescope and microscope, Shakespeare's era was the dawn of modern science. While he wrote his plays, Francis Bacon was laying the foundations of empiricism. William Harvey was studying blood circulation. Some scholars notice astonishing parallels. In Shakespeare's plays, they find echoes of the latest astronomical discovery of his time. When Hamlet says that he could be confined within a nutshell and yet consider himself king of infinite space, is this not a reflection of Giordano Bruno's infinite universe? Doctors still study Shakespeare's characters as clinical cases. King Lear's condition is a remarkably precise description of senile dementia. Lady Macbeth's sleepwalking is a classic psychiatric example. Shakespeare possessed an extraordinary gift of observation, what we today would call the scientific method. He dissected human nature with the precision of a neurosurgeon. Slow your breathing. Let the words settle. The night is listening. Chapter 32. Original pronunciation. How did he really sound? We are used to hearing Shakespeare spoken by actors with flawless, polished, royal English. Clear. Measured. Almost ceremonial. But in Elizabethan times, the English language sounded very different. It was something in between modern Irish, Scottish speech, and the rough rural dialects of southwest England. In recent decades, linguists, among them David Crystal, have worked to reconstruct Shakespeare's original pronunciation. And when his plays are performed with this authentic accent, something extraordinary happens. First, lost rhymes return. Words like love and prove suddenly rhyme again, as they did in Shakespeare's time. Second, the verse begins to move faster. It becomes rougher, more energetic. It loses unnecessary stiffness and turns back into what it truly was, living, street-born, furious art. This reminds us of something important. Shakespeare was not a museum exhibit. He was the punk rock of his age. Chapter 33. Digital Shakespeare. Algorithms versus mystery. In the 21st century, computers came to the aid of Shakespeare scholars. A method called stylometry analyzes the frequency of specific words, conjunctions, and rhythmic patterns. Thanks to digital analysis, we now know with certainty that many of Shakespeare's plays were written in collaboration. Henry VI, for example, was created with the participation of Christopher Marlowe. Macbeth was likely revised by Thomas Middleton, who probably added the witches' songs. This does not diminish Shakespeare's genius. On the contrary, it shows him as part of a living, boiling theatrical workshop, a place where writers helped one another, rewrote texts on the fly, and worked at a relentless pace. Shakespeare was not a lonely genius locked in an ivory tower. He stood at the very center of an industry. Chapter 34, Shakespeare in 2024. What would he say? If William Shakespeare somehow found himself in our time, would he be shocked? Perhaps, but more likely, he would adapt very quickly. He would master Twitter or X because no one knew how to compress meaning into a short phrase better than he did. He would appreciate HBO series because their worlds of power, betrayal, blood, and ambition are his native terrain. He would see his plays performed in prisons and understand how they help inmates face their own rage. He would watch Romeo and Juliet performed in zones of military conflict, reminding people of the absurdity of hatred. Shakespeare would understand that his magic did not end when Prospero broke his staff. It merely changed its form. Now his words live in digital clouds, in video game scripts, and in the neural networks of artificial intelligence. Chapter 35. The final thought. The man who became us. We are nearing the end of our journey. Across these 70,000 characters, we tried to embrace the impossible. We walked the muddy streets of London and the halls of royal palaces. We looked into the eyes of mad kings and tender lovers. Shakespeare's main lesson is simple and endlessly complex. To be human is work. It is a constant choice between light and shadow, between action and doubt. He left us no autobiography because his biography is his characters. He is Hamlet and Falstaff, Lady Macbeth and gentle Desdemona. He shattered himself into thousands of fragments and gave them to us. The next time you hear the phrase, "all the world's a stage," remember, this is not just a beautiful quote. It is an invitation to responsibility. If the world is a stage, each of us has a role. And Shakespeare did everything he could to help us play it with passion, with awareness, and with the understanding that behind the curtain of life, there is always something more than words can hold. Epilogue, the final bow, the lights fade. The Globe Theatre stands empty. Only the sound of the Thames remains, and the distant cry of seagulls. William Shakespeare steps backstage, slightly limping, as some scholars suggest after reading his sonnets. He leaves a quill and a stack of papers on the table. On one of them, a line is written, "We are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with a sleep. Protect your dreams. Read Shakespeare, because when you read him, you are reading yourself."